It's a new year. It's new hope. Who's going to have the best 2025 in the NBA? Plus, is this the best Knicks team ever? We'll talk about it on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network. The hottest topics and the biggest stories in the NBA every day. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being with us Monday through Friday, hanging out with us, being an everydayer. We do appreciate you joining us, whether you're on podcast, where we do love those 5-star reviews, just like everybody does, or if you're joining us on YouTube at youtube.com/LockedOnNBA. Hit the like and subscribe button and let us know that you enjoy the show. On today's show, best Knicks team ever? Okay, maybe not ever, but like in the last 35 years-ish. Are the Pelicans going to have a fire sale? Is Russ's story in Denver going to have a happy ending? No, not Wilson, the other Russ. Plus, some bad news for the Pistons and more on today's show. But we start today. I'm Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I've got 2 Substacks at Hardwood Paroxysm and the Denver Dig. I'm co-host of Locked On Nuggets, joined by Haize from Locked On Bulls. You can catch him on Twitter at CEO Haize. Doug Branson still out, unfortunately, trying to find a Hornet starter jacket from 1994. But he'll be back tomorrow. Excited to see him back and excited for him to do the production work on this show. A lot goes into making this show what it is, and we've built something different and new from Game Night, which you should also check out because they do a great job. And Doug does a phenomenal job, and we have missed Doug. And by that, I mean me, because I've been having to come up with rundowns, and it's way harder than it should be for me. We're going to start today with this, Haize. The New York Knicks have the longest winning streak in the NBA right now this season. They won their 9th game last night. They knocked off another team that was really not in their weight class. So the schedule's been kind of easy for them as they get the win 103 and 119 over the Utah Jazz. They're 24-10. Karl Anthony Towns with another massive game for them. 31 points, 21 rebounds for Cat. How about that? They're up there in all the advanced metrics. The defense is starting to round into form. We've seen some good Knicks teams in the last 2 decades. But I'll ask you, is this the best Knicks team since the 1994 finals team with Ewing and Starks?
I think so. From a top down perspective, like from the top of the rotation to the bottom of the rotation, probably. Like the Knicks have had some solid talented teams over the years that just haven't necessarily been able to accomplish much, or whether it's injury or whatever else. But you look at the talent on this team, like Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, as he's starting to round out a little bit better. They still have yet to have Mitchell Robinson and whatever that dynamic looks like when he comes back as well. Like, I think that there's a case to be made that, yeah, this is the most talented and best Knicks team since the 95 season.
I like it. By the way, I misspoke. I meant to say that they had the longest winning streak in the Eastern Conference. And the reason I was going to do a whole thing on like, when will the Knicks streak end? But unfortunately, up next, they play the Oklahoma City Thunder twice in a week. And the Oklahoma City Thunder actually have the longest winning streak in the NBA at 12. And so I think that probably the Knicks won't get out of those matchups. But man, if they beat the Thunder, we're going to start to have some really serious conversations about this team. Brunson and Cat are such a phenomenal, great 1-2 combination. They've got so much that they bring to the table. The defense is starting to round into form a little bit. And like, we know that they have defenders. They've got OG Anunoby and Bridges. I looked this up. Bridges is actually having one of the best catch and shoot seasons in the league. Remember when we were like, man, his jumper is broken after he changed his form?
Yeah.
He's like 5th in most catch and shoot jumpers made this season. So like, that's come into form for them. They've obviously got Miles McBride off the bench. They're 4th in adjusted net rating, 3rd in offense. They're still 14th in defense. So there's some work to be done there. But I do think that there's a possibility of this team making a deep run. The other contender, I think, for best Knicks team since that 94 team, and like, you could say the 1999 finals team, but that was a weird season for a lot of reasons. The other real candidate, I think, is that 2013 team with Melo, but I would give this team the edge over that team with Melo. Like, that was a good team, but I think this team's ceiling is a lot higher than what that mellow J.R. Smith team brought to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was alluding to when I said, like, just from top to bottom, as far as all the talent at all the different positions that they have. I also think this team is a much better defensive team, has a much higher defensive ceiling than that team did. And when you have Jalen Brunson, of course, you can't bet on Jalen Brunson to finish the season like on a run like he did last year, but we know he has that in him. And now with having Towns as another creator and things like that, like if Brunson's able to finish the season anywhere near the tear that he went on last season and maintain that in the playoffs and be healthy in the playoffs, this Knicks team is going to be very dangerous in the playoffs.
Some bad news for Detroit. Jaden Ivey went down last night, had to be stretchered off, and tests this morning, they report, they probably knew it last night. Shams Charania reporting Jaden Ivey has sustained a broken fibula in his left leg. He broke his leg last night. Horrible. Just awful. Ivey was a guy that draft Knicks loved, and I was like, the people that I pay attention to loved him, so I was like, oh, I guess he's good. And his first couple of seasons in the league, I was like, yeah, I could kind of see it, but I don't know if he's going to put it together. He had to fight so hard to get into the rotation. Monty Williams didn't want to play him for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. He breaks in, he plays a little bit better towards the end of the season, and then he breaks out this year, and he looks phenomenal. And he really was a big part of this Pistons turnaround, and losing him is just absolutely wretched. Like, that's just an absolutely awful outcome for him. I'm heartbroken for Jaden Ivey, Haize.
Yeah, Jaden Ivey is a guy that he's proof of why you need a coach that believes in your roster rather than just trying to go and get a coach. Because Monty Williams, once the Pistons had to try to talk to him 3 times and turn around and make him one of the highest paid coaches in the league just for him to accept the job, you realize early on he didn't necessarily believe in that roster. And Jaden Ivey was one of the guys that was hurt by that the most. You look at him now, him turning around the season when he's averaging 17 points a game, something like that this season, and the confidence that he had. He went from being a player that was outside of the rotation. They were playing Killian Hayes over him to now at this point, like he's an important part and linchpin of what that team's going to try to do in the future. And it sucks for a season to come crashing down to end like this. And, a broken tibia, would you think that he's maybe at risk to not even be healthy, maybe at training camp next year?
Depends on how bad the fracture is, right?
Yeah.
Like with PG, it took him about 18. I want to say, no, it wasn't that 18 months. It was like, let's see, he got hurt in Team USA in July. And then he came back in like the second half of that year in like March, I want to say.
Yeah.
So the good news is that fractures are not something where it's like you were never the same again. Like that to me is the upside here, is that when you have a knee injury like an ACL, and ACLs are pretty common, but Achilles especially, if you have one of those injuries where you tear multiple ligaments in your leg, those are a lot harder for you to come back from because you have to get the supporting structure around it. Bones heal fast, and like it's going to take him time to get the strength back up in his leg and all those types of things. But I'm confident that Ivey's going to bounce back and he'll have a terrific season next year when he returns. All right, on the other side, we're going to talk about Russell Westbrook, and I need Haize's thoughts on this. I'm too close to the subject matter. Is this thing going to finally work out for Russ somewhere? Is this the place, or are we just going to get Lucy in the football again by Russ in the playoffs? Plus, it's bad for the Pelicans. It's so bad. And the question is it time for a fire sale and a hard pivot and a restart in New Orleans? We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up on Locked On NBA. So I got my wife some stuff for Christmas, but one of the things I haven't done yet is I'm going to take her to a hockey game. She's a huge hockey fan. And my wife, who is like this, she's an instructor at a college and teaches English and talks about like all of these very sensitive issues and the intersectionality of our society and like how important inclusive. And she's like the very gentle person. She turns into a raging psychopath when I take her to hockey games. Cursing, flipping off the refs, like she turns into a lunatic, and I find it very amusing. And so I want to take her to some Avalanche games, and the way I'm going to do that is Game Time, because that way I can decide on a night like, hey, do you want to go cash in your Christmas present? We got time tonight. We got somebody to watch the kids. Do you want to go watch a hockey game? And we can just turn on Game Time picks, and it'll roll up a hockey game. We can look at the week and figure out what the best game is for us with opponent and all these types of things. Get the best seats. You get stuff like the all-in including pricing when you turn that toggle that on, and you're not going to get caught with any fees. There's so much good stuff you can find with Game Time picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. We'll be right back. Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Thursday. Doug Branson's still out. Matt Moore and Haize with you. Doug trying to find a Crash Wallace jersey. So, working on that in the thrift stores. Good luck to Doug. Should be back tomorrow. So I've been very slow on this story, Haize, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. I love Russell Westbrook's game. I loved it coming out of college at UCLA. I loved it when he was on the Thunder. I loved those early years with what I called the Starship Thunder, where they had so much athleticism with him and KD and Harden. That run was so incredible. In 2014, I was like, I don't know, like 2013 to 2015, I legitimately was like, look, I get it. KD's a better player. I think Russ might be the MVP. That's how great he was. And then this stretch has happened where he's bounced from Houston to Washington to the Lakers to the Clippers and now to Denver. And it's been spotty, and he continues to be a guy. He had one of the worst shooting performances in NBA history in the playoffs last season in a loss in the playoffs. So there's all these like questions about, can you win with Russell Westbrook? Russell Westbrook has been good for Denver when he started. They've lost the minutes when Jokic is on the bench, because everyone loses in Denver when Jokic is on the bench. But he's played really well. He's been a defensive menace. He's averaging 12.7 assists. The Nuggets are 9-2 when he starts. He's been starting for Aaron Gordon, and they're 9-2 in those games. He and Jokic have an incredible two-man game chemistry. Those two guys, surprising to me, really play well together. He had a perfect triple-double. He had a triple-double, didn't miss a shot, no turnovers this week versus the Jazz. And I'm struggling with, I've maintained like, look, this is great, but in the playoffs, it's going to peter out because teams are going to leave him open and he's not going to be able to hit shots, and it never ends well. As much as I love Russ's career, he always gets found out in the playoffs now. But I will say this for him. He hasn't been taking the bad shots. He hasn't been playing erratic. He's found that for him, it's always been, I'm going to take this mid-range jumper. I'm going to take this pull-up three. And why, why? Why not? Because that's his whole logo. That's his theme, is like his whole ethos is, I can do this. Why not? Because I can do this. And he hasn't taken those shots because he's been like, well, sure, I can take those shots. It's not that he's changed, but he's like, but why should I do that when I can just pass it back to Yoke and he'll pass it back to me and we'll get a better shot? Mm-hmm. I'll ask you this, Haize. Is even if they don't win a title, that would be the dream ending, is Russ finally gets an NBA title next to Jokic. But even if they don't win the title, is this Russell Westbrook story in Denver going to end with a happy ending?
I think so. I think that, for players especially that have gone through and dealt with adversity, like sometimes just getting to a place where they just accept you for you is the boost that you need. And I do think that the Denver Nuggets they welcome Russ to just be Russ. Of course, he has to refine it to fit in and to play with this team in the system. And that's where having a really good coach that has a system, it benefits players. But I do think Russ is bought in. I think Russ has enjoyed playing with a unselfish player like Jokic that is going to find him. Like Russ can trust it. Like he is going to find Russ in the spots that matter the most. And if Russ buys in to what the Denver Nuggets are pushing, it's going to benefit everybody, right? Like they have their struggles. I would love to see them, be able to go on a long playoff run. But I think if you're looking at it as just ending with a happy ending, as far as the sense of it not being how some of the teams that he's been on the last couple of stops from Washington up through the Clippers have ended, I definitely think that that is going to be a good outcome here. And I hope that he wins it. Russ is one of those players that, like, if his career ended without a title, you can't take away from him the amazing career that it is. But if he can get that title, man, it'll just feel good for a player like Russ.
It'd be a really great story. It'd remind me a little bit of Gary Payton with the Heat in 2006. I'm old. So with Russ, I think I'm still worried. I'm worried about, can he maintain that kind of approach where I get it from his perspective that he can't change his mindset because that's the key to making what's brought him all the success that he has. He won an MVP. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars. I get it. And what I like is I don't think that he's shifted that. He's not like, oh, I shouldn't take this shot. He's just like, well, I don't have to because I can just give it to Jokic and we'll get a better shot out of it. And what I think is really surprising is him and Jokic actually kind of seek out the same type of basketball, quick passes, back and forth, finding open looks for teammates. It's not like heliocentric, high pick and roll, pass to the corner. It's a lot more dynamic and feeling things out in the process. And I think Jokic really loves playing with him. They're playing so fast right now, which is crazy. It's one of the reasons why I think their defense is such garbage is because that first half versus the Hawks last night was really one of the worst defensive games I've ever seen in person. But they're playing super fast, like up and down the floor. And Russ is really a large part of that. And they needed kind of somebody to bring that type of energy. My only lingering concern, he's doing this with Aaron Gordon now. When Gordon comes back, who are you benching? And the easy answer for everyone's Christian Brown. But my understanding is that both the front office and ownership are behind Christian Brown starting. You're not going to bench MPJ. He's making too much money. You're not benching Jamal Murray. He's making too much money. There's no spot for him. And even if they could bench Christian Brown, you can then have two non-shooters in Aaron Gordon and Russ on the floor. That hurts your spacing. I think they could build a really successful team around Russ. I think it's hard with where this roster is at right now. But for more on that, you can check out Locked On Nuggets. Meanwhile, Haize, the Wizards won last night. I don't know who they beat. I can't really recall who they beat Haize's Bulls after I talked them up. I had like a literal conversation 2 days ago with Haize where I was like, hey, I think your Bulls are pretty good. And then they lost to the Wizards. But in doing so, guess what? The Pelicans with their loss take over the number 1 spot in the lottery standings. They have the fewest wins. So when I'm talking about playoff positioning, I'm always like, how many games back in the loss column are you? Because you can't make up losses. You can make up wins. Same deal with if you're chasing the lottery. You can make up. You can't make up wins. You can make up losses. So you have to have like the fewest wins possible. They have fewest wins in the NBA right now. There's no, I don't know what the hope is. Like maybe Ingram and Zion gets back and maybe they go on a crazy run to get back to 500, but that's like the best that you're hoping for. And with the inability to keep Zion healthy with the Brandon Ingram contract situation, Haize, I'll ask you, like, is it time just to burn this whole thing down and start completely over?
I think it is. And I think that it coincides with them they're going to have a great pick in one of the deepest drafts in recent memory. You have players that are coming up off their contracts sooner rather than later. And like Ingram, you can try to move CJ McCollum. And then you have some young promising players as well. So that way, if you do whatever draft pick you do have this year, they're not coming into a situation where they don't have some solid players around them. You still got Herb Jones. You got Trey Murphy there. Eve Missy, who's a guy that, he's played really good so far. He's actually one of the guys I liked at the bottom end of that draft, and he's playing really well. So I think this is a time to pivot. Like sometimes teams have to make a pivot from a roster at a time where they have to rely a lot on hope. This is a time where it can make a lot of sense for everything to just clear the deck, do your fire sale, and then start off brand new with your lottery pick this year.
I can't believe that like cutting Zion is like a legit like
crazy, right?
That's being talked. It's so wild for a number 1 pick with his kind of profile. By the way, ESPN did report this week that Bill Duffy, his agent, has no intention to push for a trade. And so he's not looking to get out. And, from there, I think they'll probably try and move on. I'll just say this. I think the Anthony Davis run had a lot of things happen at once, a lot of bad luck. I think that they were criticized for their roster construction when I think they were unfairly maligned because like they tried to build a good team around him instead of building slowly. And if you don't do that, then people are like, why are you wasting time? Go get real players. And then Davis was hurt a lot. They had one good run. And after their first good run, he hooks up with Rich Paul and then that's it. With Zion, but not like he was incredible when he's on the floor. He just can't stay healthy. And I don't know how much you can really blame the Pels for that. But man, if they get Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper or one of these guys, for the love of God, you've got a good team around him. Like, honestly, just pick the healthiest guy. Like, no bigs, Just pick the healthiest guy and build around that dude. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Zion Williamson as we get closer to the deadline. I'm sure we'll talk about more here on Locked On NBA. Up next, I got questions for Haize about predictions for the 2025 and the crystal ball of his. How many games are the Cavaliers going to win this season? And who's going to have the best and worst 2025 in the NBA? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. One of the things I love about FanDuel for NBA, you can parlay awards. So, like right now, if you want to get in, I would tell you that the Sixth Man of the Year award, everyone kind of thought that Peyton Pritchard had it locked up. Go look at the standings for who's actually leading and scoring off the bench. It's not Peyton Pritchard. It's DeAndre Hunter for the Atlanta Hawks. And behind him, Malik Beasley, who, by the way, is 60-1 for Sixth Man of the Year. A lot of options there. You can put those with another player like Jokic or Shea for MVP, and you're really cooking with gas. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel has bets for which players will score a touchdown in the NFL, how many points each team will score, and more. I'm loading up on futures because I have to emotionally hedge with my Chiefs. So I'm like, Bills versus Eagles, Ravens versus Lions, all these other types of exactas. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. All right, last segment here on Locked On NBA with you on a Thursday. Doug Branson will be back tomorrow, and I won't have to keep making up stupid reasons why he's out. So the Cavaliers get the win last night versus the Lakers. They roll through the Nuggets. They roll through the Warriors. They roll through the Lakers. Now, I don't think any of those teams are in like the top tier, right? So like we'll wait to see when they face off of against OKC, Dallas if fully healthy, etc. But they're currently on a 72 game pace. We have two teams on track for 70+ wins. That's crazy. And it shows you how parity is manifested in the NBA. It's not just like everybody's a little mid. It's more of there's like 5 teams that are elite, a bunch of pretty good ones, and then absolute trash at the bottom. How many games do you think the Cavaliers? I want you to go ahead and put a prediction now as we sit here on January 2nd. How many games are the Cavs winning in 2020 in this season?
So I try to always, like, I know they're on a 72 win pace. That would be crazy.
Right.
I try to always factor in realism. There's always going to be bound to be a lull in there, a little one. I'm not expecting the Cavs to like go on some crazy 5-game losing streak or anything like that. I'd say I'm gonna predict right now 68 wins for the Cleveland Cavaliers this season.
Woo! That's a lot of wins.
It is.
That's a lot of wins. So look, I have a projection system. And it's got him at 74.
Wow. That's crazy.
For them to improve, right? And I don't trust that. That's based on like, because that model is bound by what they've done, right? It's like, well, they've done, this is what they have done, so this is what they will do. They'll have injuries and they'll lose some. They'll get bogged down. They'll have those games, that stretch where it's like, Jared Allen's out and Donovan Mitchell's out or Darius Garland. So they'll have some of those. They'll lose a few games. The defense is still kind of behind, although it's catching up. I liked a lot of what I've seen from their defense lately. I think 68, that's a really good number, honestly. I'll go 66, which is still an insanely high number.
It is.
Like if you told Cavs fans after last year, after they barely got by the Magic, and then that sad series versus the Celtics with Allen and Mitchell hurt, hey, don't worry, you guys are going to win 66 games next season. Man, would they take it. But it's wild how good they've been every single night. I love their win profile. They can hang with the great team. They beat the great teams. They beat the snot out of the bad teams. They don't get caught a lot. That's one of the things I really admire about them and OKC is they just don't get caught. Very impressive. I mean, it just continues to be an amazing season for the Cavaliers. And every time I'm like, maybe the West Coast road trip will trip them up. Nope. Just keep. LA nightlife couldn't beat them. They were in LA over New Year's. They were in California over New Year's and it couldn't get them. That's impressive to me. All right, Haize. Last question for you. It's new year, new hoop. Starting now through 2025. When we get to the end of it, when it's January 2nd, 2026, who are we going to say had the best calendar year in 2025? It could be a team or a player. What team or player is going to have the best 2025?
That's great. I was thinking team. You threw in the player there, threw me for a little hoop. Team, I'm going to say the OKC Thunder. I think they're going to have the best calendar year of 2025. And I think that you already know they're my favorite. So I'm going to say player. Team, OKC Thunder. Player, Ja Morant.
Okay. I like that. I like the jaw take that's a good swerve there. I like that. For best team in 2025, I'm going to go with I'm going to go with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they're
Okay.
making the finals. I really do. And you make the finals, good chance at winning it. That's a pretty good run. And then I think they can sustain it. I think Kenny Atkinson really unlocks something here. There's a lot of ways this can combust. There's a lot of things that can change. That's what I love about these predictions is you'll never see what the changes that are coming. But I'm gonna go with the Cavs. I really do. I'm getting to where it's less that I believe in this team, and it's more that I'm like, I don't believe in Boston enough to say the Cavs can't do it, and they've been good enough. For the player, Shea, I think is a really good, that's a really good candidate, right? Is Shea. It's tough because he's already starting out hurt, but I'm gonna go with Luka Doncic.
Okay.
I think that
That's fair.
I think Luka's gonna have an absolutely phenomenal season and another deep playoff run, and we'll start to really talk about Luka as the kind of guy that he is in these MVP standings. We'll look at him as one of those type of level players. Is there any doubt in your mind that Victor Wembanyama is 2026? Do you have any doubt?
Oh, no, none at all. Wemby it's and honestly, it's a possibility that he could have the best 2025. It's definitely a possibility, but yeah, I'd be willing to bet on that for 2026 for sure.
All right, worst. Who's gonna have the worst 2025 in the NBA? I'll let you think about it. I'm gonna go for team in 2025. I'm actually not going to go with the Wizards. I think there's a little bit of talent there, and then I think they can pivot pretty quickly when they want to. I think they can actually shift pretty quickly. They're going to get a good lottery pick, and I think that they can actually turn this thing very quickly. So I'm not going to go with the Wizards. The Pels, I think, are too easy. I don't want to go with that. I'm going to go with the Toronto Raptors. I think there are changes coming with that team. There are a lot of burblings around the league, just about the Raptors in general. I think that there's some questions about, hey, Scotty Barnes is not consistently, he's so good when he's good, but he's not great every single night the way that you want a great player to be. The supporting structure doesn't look good. They're losing games. When they lose, they get blown out. Yeah. And they're still going to win enough games to where they may not wind up with one of these top 4, top 5 lottery spots. So if they get jumped, especially if somebody jumps them in the lottery, they could really fall backwards and fall out of a key spot. So I'm going to say the Raptors are going to have the worst 2025.
I'm going to go with the Portland Trailblazers. I see nothing but pain in their future. I think it's going to be consistent, and I don't care what they do. The Portland Trailblazers is just one of those teams that no matter who they draft, they can get lucky. If they get drafted by the Blazers, I'm going to more lean towards they're probably going to end up being a bust, or they're just not. There may be a great player, but the Portland Trailblazers is never going to be able to put a team around that player. I think the Portland Trailblazers are destined to have a lot of pain in their future, so I'm going to go with the Portland Trailblazers there.
My only hesitation there, somebody that covers the Blazers mentioned this to me. Go look at the splits for how well Scoot Henderson played when Chauncey Billups was away from the team, and then look at how bad he was when Chauncey came back.
I have to go look at that. That's crazy.
Just something to look at. By the way, I think I don't want this. I think Griff's a really smart guy. I think David Griffin's about to have at least a bad professionally first half of 2025 because it's a rough spot to be the GM of the Pelicans right now. Okay. All right, that's going to do it for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. You can follow Haize on Twitter at CEO Haize. I'm at HP Basketball. Doug Branson will be back tomorrow for our normal show. We look forward to the weekend, including OKC has the Knicks and the Celtics in a weekend. We got some big games this weekend. We have Celtics Thunder on Sunday in a game slotted where no one can watch it. We have to talk about that and more. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On NBA.